Thanks for staying with us. Let's go to this. There have been calls for private players to be allowed to help resolve the crisis in the railway sector for quite some time now. Transnet, for example, has been plagued with so many problems, including resignations at the top when you look at its management structure recently. And also the company featured prominently in state capture. And we saw this laying it bare, just how dire the state of that parastatal is. Mesela Nhlapo is with the African Rail Industry Association, and she is the CEO there. Mesela, thank you so much for your time this evening. I mean, this is a subject you and I have been talking about over time now, and talking about the fact that it needs to happen at some point, and it needs to move at an accelerated pace. We've been hearing about the fact that things are moving. There's a document that has now been put together. Have you had sight of it? What does it say about the private players' involvement?
Good evening. It's the time for change has always presented itself yesterday, not today. And we think that as ARIA, if we had been listened to when we raised the alarm bells 2 years ago, we would not be where we find ourselves today. But we have always taken the view of providing solutions. So where we are today, we talk about the reform, and I think the process of the NLCC is a process that will eventually be given to the Department of Transport, and there will be a document owned by Department of Transport. But what is key is the participation of private sector that makes business sense, is the having an independent infrastructure manager, an independent infrastructure owner, because at the end of the day, the land is owned by the state. There should not be any confusion around that the private operator will only be renting to the use of the land.
And is that as far as it goes, or are there other avenues where private players can get involved?
Absolutely. It's not only from the private operator perspective, but private funding. How do you unlock the investment? The investment is, we're going to find investment in the policy where it says how third-party access will evolve. And I think that the NLCC is working at a document that will then be part of the implementation. But the part of the implementation, it must respond to the national rail policy as it has been approved and launched by government.
So when it comes then to, this particular plan and what you and I are talking about, how much of a step closer are we to make sure that we are seeing this happen, or is it still a process that is likely to take time before we can see it being implemented?
Our economy cannot afford to take time. We need to have the national rail policy implemented yesterday.
And when it comes then to implementation, do you think, in your view, it can yield an immediate turnaround given the state of railways and ports in the country?
Absolutely. With the support that we as ARIA have been providing to government for the past 2-3 years, it can be achieved. We have the power. We have the power to achieve this as a railway community because the economy depends on it. We need to start understanding that logistics are a golden thread to the economy. It puts together different aspects of the economy to make sure that this economy survives. So it's not a matter of that do we want to, when we can do, we are compelled by the situation we find ourselves in. We need to have rail working yesterday.
And one then asks the question, when all of this is happening, what happens with Transnet? Because it's also yet another house that needs to get itself in order.
Transnet will get itself in order. And we have said that we welcome Transnet participation in ARIA, and that is the first sign that they see the importance of private sector and using the association as the in-between to not to talk past each other as private sector and public sector, but to use the association as a medium make sure that we deliver on what is contained in the National Rail Policy. But I still go back to say it is the National Rail Policy that needs to be implemented. There is no redesign of the wheel. The document is there. All that is required is implementation in line with the policy.
And let's see then if this is done as speedily as you say, because it's going to be very important for the recovery of this particular sector. But let me thank you for your time this evening. Do appreciate it. That was Mesela Nhlapo, who is the African Rail Industry Association CEO.